All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as Brian Baldinger and Richard Sherman both weighed in today on Brock Purdy's pending contract extension with the 49ers. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're also brought to you by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. We've done it 5 or 6 times already this year. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. And thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, let's talk a little Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has regressed from last year to this year. Last year, 31 touchdown passes, 11 interceptions. This year, 15 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions. And he threw a really bad one with the game on the line, the season on the line. He overthrew Juwan Jennings on a ball that he never should have thrown. He had 3 receivers open underneath. He did not look at any of those receivers and blindly went down the field to JJ. It turned into an interception. It cost the Niners the game and ultimately cost them their season because they are all but mathematically eliminated. So let's talk a little bit about the Niners' options and Brock Purdy's contract extension. He's 24. Tom Pelissero reported Saturday on the Rich Eisen show that Purdy is going to seek a contract at the top of the market, and we'll talk about that. But that's north of $60 million. He's got a 100 passer rating in more games. I believe 13 games with 100-plus passer rating, most of any quarterback in his first 3 seasons in the NFL. So Brock's been good. He's efficient. He's a leader. He's won 4 playoff games, including an NFC championship, and he's eligible for a contract extension starting at the end of the regular season. Now, the Niners could say, play it out, but that's not going to be met kindly. That's just going to blow up their 2025 season. So they really, the old, let him sit, don't pay him. You'll hear people say, I wouldn't pay him. I would just let him sit and wait. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not the way the NFL works. He's not going to go into this season as a lame duck player. His agent's not going to allow that to happen. So you can just eliminate that option. This whole I'll just wait a year. Those are the same people that were saying, let Brandon Ayuk play on the 5th-year option. But how come the Niners didn't do that? Because it wasn't really an option. You have to have some agreement there from the player, and if the player is staunchly against it, it's not going to work. So the bottom line is Brock Purdy was better last year than this year. He's been really, really good in a short amount of time. He struggled at times this year. The question is, why has he struggled? His receivers are pretty ordinary with, below average speed. His offensive line is not very good. Deebo Samuel is taking several steps backward. Brandon Ayuk was out of shape and then now is out for the year and probably diminished going forward. Ricky Pearsall has had 2 receptions in the last 5 games, and he's run 107 routes to get those 2 receptions. So Pearsall ain't it. Ayuk ain't it. Deebo ain't it. CMC's got double Achilles tendonitis in both Achilles, and he's heading into his age 28 season. Who knows what he's going to give you in the future? The reality of the Purdy backslide is really tied in his weapons. Last year, Ayuk, Deebo, and CMC combined for 40 touchdowns. This year, that trio has 2. And there's no guarantees that any of those guys are going to be healthy and contributing a year from now. So Ian Rappaport said, according to the Niners, in their mind, Brock Purdy is still the guy, and they plan to lock him up long-term this upcoming offseason with a big money extension. Now, Bill Barnwell has speculated from ESPN that the contract will be 5 years, $325 million, which would be $65 million a year for Brock Purdy, which would be $5 million north of Dak Prescott's, pace-setting quarterback contract right now where he makes $60 million. I would say to you, let's try to define what Brock Purdy is, and then we can discuss how you want to pay him. I think Brock Purdy is a top 10 quarterback for sure. Is he better than Mahomes? No. Josh Allen? No. Joe Burrow? No. Lamar Jackson? No. Matthew Stafford? No. I'd put him behind Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels. So I have Brock Purdy 8th, the 8th best quarterback in the NFL. Now, other people would look at that and say, hey, I have C.J. Stroud over him. Okay, now he's 9th. Other people would say, I want Russell Wilson over him. Okay, now he's 10th. Some people would say Baker Mayfield's playing better than him. Okay, now he's 11th. Some people would say Jordan Love's better than him. Now he's 12th. If you say Jalen Hurts is better than him, now he's 13. Sam Darnold's better than him. Now he's 14. You see, Justin Herbert's better than him. Now he's 15. I think that's about as far as anybody with any, intellectual honesty would go. So Brock Purdy, is he a top-tier quarterback? No. I think he's a second-tier quarterback. I think he's the 8th best quarterback. Some people might think he's more like middle of the pack, which would be, as I said, 14, 15 is right about 15, 14, 15, 16 is mid-pack in the NFL. So what are the Niners' options? What do they do at quarterback with Brock Purdy? A lot of people are like, don't pay Brock Purdy, don't pay Brock Purdy. Make him play for peanuts. I mean, that's just not realistic. Dak Prescott is making $60 million. Joe Burrow's making $55. Jordan Love, $55. Trevor Lawrence, $55. Tua Tagovailoa, $53. Jared Goff, $53. Justin Herbert, $52.5. Lamar Jackson, $52. Jalen Hurts, $51. When you look at what those guys have in common, what do they have in common? They've won no rings. None. Prescott, Burrow, Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. They have won no rings. No rings. Now, Brock Purdy has got no rings, but these guys have no rings. Those are all the quarterbacks making north of $50 million. Okay, Brock Purdy is 23-11. And he's 4-2 in the playoffs. Dak Prescott's 2-5 in the playoffs and has no rings. $60 million. Joe Burrow is 35-30-1 in his career. He's 5-2 in the playoffs, but no rings. He's making 55. Jordan Love, 1-1 in the playoffs, no rings, 55. Trevor Lawrence, 22 wins, 38 losses in the regular season. 1-1 in the playoffs, no rings. Tua Tagovailoa, 0-1 in the playoffs, no rings. Jared Goff, 4-4 in the playoffs, no rings. Justin Herbert, 38-38 career. That's his career record. Or 38-38. He's 500. 0-1 in the playoffs, no rings. No playoff wins. Lamar Jackson. Everybody always, Lamar. He's 2-4 in the playoffs, no rings. And Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is 2-3 in the playoffs, no rings. Of that entire group of quarterbacks who make north of $50 million, they've accounted for no rings, 0 Super Bowl rings, and Joe Burrow is the only one that even has a winning record in the playoffs. And they're all making north of $50 million. So excuse me if I don't seem overly moved by the people saying Brock doesn't deserve the money. He's 23-11. He's 4-2 in the playoffs. He's won in it. He's gone to a Super Bowl. Outside of Burrow and Goff and Hurts, none of the other guys even have gone to a Super Bowl. So Brock Purdy and Joe Burrow are the only guys. If you paid Brock $50 million, him and Burrow would be the only guys being paid north of $50 million who actually have a winning record in the playoffs. So what should the Niners do at quarterback going forward? All right, let's hear from a couple people. Here's Baldy. Here's Brian Baldinger weighing in. He went on 95.7 The Game on the morning show like he normally does with Bonte and Shasky. And he's bringing up Sam Darnold. Let's hear it.
Baldy, I'll ask you directly, and we'll get back into the rest of the team because Green Law, Debo, I mean, there's so much to talk about. If John Lynch came to you and said, hey, Brian, I know you watch every single week, and you watch all these other quarterbacks around the league. Brock is demanding top 5 money. What do we do here? What would your advice to him be?
I'd say I'd go flip him for Sam Darnold right now.
Wow.
I mean, what, like, so Minnesota, like, look, let's just think about Sam for a second. You sat there as a backup all year. He learned what a first-class franchise, game planning, how to build a team. Like, he saw that for the first time in his life. Now he's with Kevin O'Connell, who's an elite play caller with a very, very good offense that has a real style to it, and he's flourishing. And Minnesota doesn't have to commit anything to him right now. All they're doing, I talked to the general manager 2 weeks ago, Quezzy, and just to play it out. They've got a quarterback they drafted. They don't have to give him top flight money, or they could trade him. Like, I would be having a conversation with Minnesota to see what it would take to get Sam Darnold back. He's a bigger, stronger, more athletic, I don't know, but he's bigger, stronger than what Brock is. Like, or can you play with both of them at a modicum of salary and afford both and, I don't know, have a competition? I mean, I'd be interested to see what it would take to get Sam Darnold.
All right, that's a little bit of Brian Baldinger saying, hey, go get Sam Darnold and trade Brock Purdy. He's suggesting they should go forward with Darnold and move off of Brock Purdy. That Darnold is bigger with a better arm. But, here's my one thing with Darnold. He was terrible until this year when he had Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and a really good Minnesota coaching staff and a really good Minnesota defense. So what would he be with the Niners? He was horrendous with the Jets. He was horrendous with the Panthers. He only started one game with the Niners and lost. And threw an interception at the end to seal the loss. He goes to Minnesota with a phenomenal cast, and he has one good regular season. And now you're going to cast aside Brock Purdy for Sam Darnold and ignore the fact that he's a turnover machine going back to USC. So as far as I'm concerned, those are your options. Let's hear from Richard Sherman. He went on the Richard Sherman podcast and talked a little bit about Purdy's contract going forward as well. Here's a little Richard Sherman.
What does Brock Purdy deserve? They did a poll in the Bay Area. 38% say he deserves 20 to 30 million. 29% say he deserves between 31 and 40 million. I hear you. I'm with you. But this is the National Football League. You guys are speaking like fans, and businesses don't quite work that way. I'm sure, you're not happy with his performance right now, but I can name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks making over $50 million that haven't come close to winning anything. And this guy's been to an NFC championship and a Super Bowl. He's played incredibly well in the postseason. I mean, you could talk about Dak Prescott and his playoff woes. You could talk about Jordan Love and his playoff woes. So when you're negotiating with a team, unless you're willing to move on from Brock Purdy, they're going to be paying him $50+ million. Brock Purdy's going to get his money. I think he's done a great job over the majority of his career. You can say what you want about it, but that's how the National Football League goes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry.
All right, there you go, a little Richard Sherman. So, he says, hey, look, if you got a free agent quarterback and he's accomplished what Brock's accomplished, you're going to pay him $50 million. Now, do you have to pay him 65? Probably not. But I don't know how you could get away not paying him 50. Once again, all the guys north of 50 outside of Joe Burrow have a losing record or a 500 record in the playoffs. Brock Purdy's 4-2 in the playoffs. He's also 23-11 in the regular season. He's also pretty high on some of the efficiency numbers across the board. Now, it's funny, people want to move off of Brock, and it's like, well, look, this year he's backslid. So now we're going to put everything that Brock is into this year when he didn't have CMC, he didn't have a healthy Ayuk, he had an old Deebo Samuel, a bad line, and a subpar defense, and was running for his life. And so we're going to take this year with all those things and say this is Brock Purdy. And at the same time, we're going to take 1 year of Sam Darnold in Minnesota with the best receiver in the game and maybe the best combo receivers in the game, and we're just going to say 1 year of Sam Darnold, we've seen enough. So even though Sam Darnold has been bad up to now, he has one good year in Minnesota, now he's the guy. Even though Brock Purdy's been really good up to now, rejuvenated an Iowa State program, led them to a Fiesta Bowl, had one of the greatest starts in NFL history. He's gone to multiple NFC championship games and a Super Bowl. He's played really well. He was in the MVP discussion last year. But because he had a backslide this year with all these things around him negatively affecting things, we're going to just get rid of Brock and we're going to go to Sam. And then we're going to expect that Sam Darnold next year in this system with Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings and Ayuk off an injury is going to produce for the Niners the same way he produced this year for the Vikings with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. I'm not buying it. I'm not going for it. What should the Niners do at quarterback going forward? These are their options. You can sign Brock Purdy for $50 million and build around him, which is what I would do. Get rid of Brandon Allen, get rid of Josh Dobbs, and build the rest of the quarterback room around him and Tanner Mordecai with young guys that you think have potential, that you like in the draft, day 3 draft choices. That would be my plan. You have Brock as the starter. You have a backup in Mordecai who knows the system. And then you're taking a couple flyers on some young quarterbacks that you think have potential until you find the next superstar, or Brock wins it for you, or Brock proves that he isn't the guy. That's the plan I would go with. Now, other people would say, trade Brock Purdy. Get a couple picks for him right now and go sign a free agent. Sam Darnold is a free agent. But once again, Sam Darnold coming into this year was 33-37 career and has never played a minute in the playoffs in the NFL. You're really going to get off of Brock Purdy voluntarily, a man who won an NFC championship game for you and led you to 2 in a 3-year span, and you're going to go out, or you jump off of that for Sam Darnold, who's 33-37, has never sniffed the playoffs and had his best year with a stacked Vikings team. To me, if you expect Sam Darnold to come here and do great things, I think you're going to be very disappointed. And many of the same people who are saying, get Sam Darnold, were people that last year or 2 years ago were like, dude, Sam Darnold cannot be in front of Trey Lance on the depth chart in training camp. So last year you're arguing with total passion that Sam Darnold sucks so bad that he can't be ahead of Trey Lance, who's Dallas's third-string quarterback in the Niners training camp roster. But here we are a year later, and you're willing to kiss off Brock Purdy and hand the keys to the franchise to 33-37, no playoff appearances, Sam Darnold. That, to me, sounds really risky. So you can sign Brock. You can trade Brock and go sign a Sam Darnold. You could trade for Kirk Cousins. Atlanta wants to play Michael Penix Jr. But Kirk Cousins, who's 83-74-2 career, is also only 1-3 in the playoffs. So is that really the answer? You could trade Brock Purdy and try to move up in the first round and draft a Cam Ward. I mean, it would be huge risk. But in some ways, I would admire that because that shows bowling balls and some personnel evaluation conviction that Cam Ward is going to be the next Lamar Jackson. And if you really believe that Cam Ward is the next Lamar Jackson, you probably ought to make that move. You probably ought to trade Brock Purdy and your 10th pick or 14th pick or whatever it's going to be, and move up into the top 2 or 3 and see if you can get Cam Ward. But isn't Cam Ward just a very similar version of Brock Purdy? He's a playmaker, he's a processor, but he's about 6 feet and change. He doesn't have the biggest arm of all time. He doesn't have a laser. He's not Mahomes. He doesn't run like Lamar, though he runs without fear, I'll say that. But he's not the same kind of runner as Lamar Jackson. So that's your in-draft option. Shedeur Sanders, come on. I really don't believe Shedeur Sanders is going to be a great player. Or you can take your shot in the draft on some day 3 picks behind, go with Brock Purdy and Tanner Mordecai and fill up your room with day 3 picks behind him. That's an option. You could sign a reclamation project quarterback, a Mac Jones, a Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, a Daniel Jones. Who knows? Maybe is Indy getting tired of Anthony Richardson? Maybe you could trade for an Anthony Richardson if you really believed in his future. The only other thing that's kind of intriguing is you could sign Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's a future Hall of Famer. I think he kind of found himself this year in Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson is as I said, he's a future Hall of Famer. Now he's 37, but he's won a Super Bowl. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He kind of found himself this year in Pittsburgh. You want to do that? If you don't believe in Brock Purdy, you could trade Brock Purdy for picks and go sign Russell Wilson, who signed a 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe he's set to be a free agent. You could go after kind of a little bit more of a sure thing in Russell and hope that you could dial back the Seattle Seahawks version of Russell in the early days. So those are your options. You can go for the established veteran in Russell Wilson. You can sign him as a free agent and trade Brock. You could sign a reclamation project quarterback. I just named 3 or 4 of them. Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, you name it. Pick your reclamation quarterback. You can trade Brock Purdy with your draft choice and try to move up in the top of the first round for a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders if you were convicted that those guys were special. You could try to trade for Kirk Cousins, who would love to play for Kyle Shanahan and is readily available, but you're going to pay him a ton of money. I don't know that makes sense since he's never really won big games. You could sign Sam Darnold as a free agent based on his 1 year in Minnesota, but what happens if the 33 and 37 Sam that was in Carolina and New York and San Francisco appears? Then you've kissed off Brock Purdy and you've hitched your wagon to Sam Darnold, and the fans are probably calling for you to be fired. You could trade Brock Purdy and go one of these directions, or you could sign Brock Purdy, and if you sign him, you're going to sign him for $50 million and probably not a penny less. And you can build around him. So what would I do? I would do that. I would sign Brock Purdy for $50 million. I would not be afraid that he backslid this year. I would look at this year fairly and honestly and say the line sucked, the defense sucked, the special teams sucked, Ayuk sucked, CMC got hurt and was out all year. Debo literally got old overnight, and I was left with me, George, and my good intentions. And that's it. That's all I had. Me and George. And, J.P. Mason and Garendo helped out. I mean, that's what Brock Purdy had this year. Him and George and a couple of young backs. That's all he had. He was running for his life. So I wouldn't put this whole year on Brock and be like, oh, he's mid. No, he's not mid. Fucking Debo's mid. The Niner receivers are mid. Ricky Pearsall is sub-mid. They're not getting anything from their receivers. They're not getting anything from their line. So those are your options, Niner fans. What do you want the Niners to do at quarterback? Sign Brock, trade Brock, sign Sam Darnold, trade for Kirk Cousins, trade up for a Cam Ward, sign a reclamation project quarterback, sign a veteran like Russell Wilson and hope he dials it back and you get a Super Bowl win out of it and trade off of Brock. But if you're going to pay him, you're going to pay him $50 million, and you're going to pay him that because he's worth it. He's worth it. Is he as good as Mahomes? No. But he's as good as Jalen Hurts. He's as good as Jared Goff. He's as good as Tua Tagovailoa. He's as good as Justin Herbert. He's as good as Trevor Lawrence. He's as good as Jordan Love. Is he Burrow? No. But he's as good as Dak Prescott. So just because he's not Lamar, just because he's not Burrow, just because he's not Mahomes, just because he's not Josh Allen, doesn't mean you shouldn't extend him and build around him. And if I ran the Niners, I'd extend him and I'd build around him. I'd love to hear your comments below. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. We're also brought to you by Better. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.